Waiting on a few more people to join us. Okay, so I got four people on. Invite one more. Okay, so I got a few of you on. Not sure if anybody has Danny's direct number. I'll reach out to Danny as well. Danny, Brandy, and Coral. And we're going to be starting off with math again because I really want to make sure that these two variable equations that we're comfortable with them. What we're going to talk about outside of math is going to be a writing template, and we'll talk about the different types of writing. Okay. Here you're joining. All right. Okay. And again, they're starting now to look at the possibility of extending this class on into the summer, and I would really like to do that. And I'm not sure your work situation, but there's a lot of people who would love to come in and speak on opportunities within the community and things like that that I would love to have as a guest speaker. But it would take some time and coordination to really get that going. So I really want to have the participation in this class be high so that we can move on and do more before the test and get some guest speakers and maybe even help people find work. I know that's a big deal right now, given the situation. The mayor I was reading said there's about 900,000 people in Las Vegas. Like, I might not even just be Las Vegas. I want to say that might even be statewide out of work. I know for a fact out of the casinos, 250,000 are out of work. So I want to use this platform to try to make a difference for the people that would normally be going to school and working and now only have the option to go to school and are going to be worried about working. So the best thing we can do is keep our attendance high. So what I'm going to do is I want to jump back into those two variable equations. It's kind of kept me up in that we're going to see a lot of this, and it's not as simple as memorizing as some of the things we're going to be talking about and reading. You're going to have more tools, and they're pretty black and white tools in some of the areas of reading we're going to be talking about today, reading and writing. But for this math, it's going to be a real test of what we know, right? A real test of our numeracy. So we're going to put up some problems. And again, if you would like to use the conference call feature, um, let me know in the live chat because I know that makes it easier to ask questions as we're working it than it does through the live chat. So if you'd like me to put up the number, please respond on the live chat and I'll do that. One person said maybe later. Still haven't heard from Roof. Um, haven't heard from Danny just yet. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to put up a new problem and let's see if we can work this out. Okay, yeah, just let me know when you get frustrated. I'm gonna leave this up. I'll let you look at that. Um, and then either actually, you know what? I'd recommend for you guys to text me the answer if you can. If you can, you want to use a live chat, that's fine. But I just really want to make sure that we keep the integrity of the problem going. All right, give you a few minutes to work on that. Okay. Heard from Danny. Still haven't heard from LG or Ruth. I got you. Okay. Okay. So let's go to the beginning. So, and then, yeah, okay. Because normally this is kind of why I like the conference call feature because like the delay and asking and walking through kind of makes it hard. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is plug in the 8 where the y is, right? So that's going to make it 2x plus what is 3 times 8? Go ahead and respond to that in the live chat. Good. Okay. So now we're all engaged. Okay. So remember, our goal is to get all of the variables on one side and all of our whole numbers on the other. Okay. So if we notice here, we have 24 equals 12. So what we want to do is get the 24 on the other side. So what we have to do is subtract. So if we subtract from one side, we're going to be subtracting from the other. And what are we left with? We're going to bring down our 2, which would be 2x. And what is 12 minus 24? No, yeah, no, that's fine if you can. But I do think for the math, it's going to be easier to do for those of you that can join. I think it would be easier to do it with the conference call feature than it's going to be through the live chat because there's a delay, and I like to hear everybody kind of walking through it because this is going to be about 60% of the test, 45% maybe on the test C, but for the majority of you, it's going to be for the majority of the tests you're going to take. This is going to be all of the math. So I want to make sure that everybody's able to walk through because this is going to be a test of your numeracy, how much you know about numbers, how comfortable you are with numbers. Um, so I'm going to invite some people to join our class. Okay. Good. So we have 2x equals negative 12. What are we going to do from here? Go ahead and send me a message in the live chat. Let me know what the next step is. Good. X equals negative 6. Okay. Questions on this? I did see, I think it was Jenny. It's comfortable. Move. Okay. Questions on this problem. This is almost like a one step or almost like a two-step one variable problem. Almost. Um, yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you. um, so if you're getting stuck here, it's because you are doing well with getting rid of the whole numbers and the numbers in the problem, but you have a tough time isolating the variable. The goal is to always get the variable by itself. So when you get down to the point where the letter is just where you have the variable by itself, that's the goal. So when you get here where it's the number and the variable, if you're breaking down with that, then we need to improve on what's known as inverse operations, doing the opposite to get the variable by itself. So that's when we need to become comfortable that when we are multiplying by the variable, we need to divide. If we're dividing by the variable, we need to multiply. And that's a step that we can definitely fix today. As soon as you get here where you notice that the variable is alone, we need to take steps to be able to get it by itself, right? And whatever we're doing to get it by itself, we need to do on the other side. All right. So let's go ahead and do one more. So let's look at. All right. Let's go ahead and work on that. Same thing. When you believe you're done, shoot me a message. Okay. So the negative numbers, remember that rule we talked about last time. When we're multiplying negative numbers and then they're both the same sign, both negative or both positive, the answer is always positive. When we're multiplying anything and it's negative and positive, the answer is negative. That's when we're subtracting um, whole numbers. If we're subtracting negative numbers, then do keep change change. That's the only time we're doing it is when we're subtracting. Okay, so it looks like got an answer from LD. Still waiting on Ruth and Danny. All right. And also, once you get your answer, if you're curious about whether you struggled with the sign, like if you're curious to see if the sign that you're using in your answer is right, plug that back into the equation and see if it's true. If it's not true, switch the sign, right? So that's another tool you have. So if you're like, oh, I know the answer has to be this, but I'm not sure if it's positive or negative, switch the sign when you plug it back in. That way you know that you're right or that you know that you're wrong. For this class, we can talk about where we made the mistake. When you take the actual test, it'll get you the right answer. And you'll probably never really do math like this again unless you come to CSN. And even then, you're going to have more tools. You're not going to be doing it online and all that other stuff. Okay. So let's work this out. So, first thing we're going to do, we're going to put the -5 back in here. We always have to do that. All right. So, this is going to be -5 minus 5y equals -15. So, what we need to do now, again, we need to get all the variables on one side of the equal sign. We need to get all of the whole numbers on the other side so we can figure out what it equals. Okay. So, what am I going to do? If I'm subtracting 5 here, then I want to add it on the other side. You could move it over, but that's not going to be helpful because, again, we want to make the variable and the whole numbers on opposite sides. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to add 5 here. Remember, we're adding 5 so we get rid of all the numbers on this side. Okay. So that's going to be negative 5y equals, what is -15 plus 5? Good. And this is an important one because I know that when we talked about adding and subtracting integers, I remember people saying that it was not easy and they were kind of getting switched around. Good. Okay. So, yes, this would be -10. Remember, if you're adding, and I don't think anyone really struggles with the adding, but if you're adding, remember that we're talking about money, right? You're -$15 in the bank. I gave you 5. Always think about that as money. You'll never get confused. When you're subtracting numbers and some of them are negative or positive, always do keep change change. Okay. Even if the numbers are wholes, let's say if you're doing 5 minus 3, you can still do keep change change. Keep change change, right? Keep change change. And I'm still going to get 2. You can always use keep change change. Doesn't matter. Anytime you're subtracting whole numbers, you can always use keep change change. It's obviously the most efficient and beneficial when we're subtracting negative numbers, but it works no matter what. All right. So now what am I going to do? And what kind of five? Mhm. And what kind of five, though? Good. Negative 5 divided by negative 5. We have y equals. Remember, a negative divided by negative is a positive. Positive 2. And you know what? Since we're going to do the live stream the entire time, we're going to have plenty of time to make up the time that we're spending on this math. We're going to have plenty of time to make that up later on for reading and writing. So, what I would like to do is do one more problem. And again, the goal is so that everyone can work through these completely alone. Then we're going to talk about next week when we have two variables, two separate problems. And we'll talk about using the substitution method, the elimination method, and a couple of different strategies. But this is the key to it all. All right. Multiple ways to get the answer. So this is really seeing how comfortable we are. Oh, and Danny, if you do me a favor, make sure you visit the website too to do the attendance because I want to show CSN that we even have students doing it from Mexico. Because the website is automatically tracked and it'll show that this is the benefit of having online classes because we're considering doing this even when the quarantine lifts. So that'd be really helpful if you could do that for us. And everyone else should be doing attendance on the website anyway. Okay, if you did forget, then when you log in today, just put a note like under name, hey, forgot to log in yesterday, so that when I'm doing attendance today, I can go through and give you credit for that. All right, give you guys some time to work on that. I was responding to you guys' messages. Sorry, I got the contractor who just came in. Okay. Yeah, you know what? Let me put the conference call number up, guys, because the live chat and everything, getting everything 5 or 6 minutes afterwards is kind of frustrating. I'd rather know in that moment you can't see. So let me see. That better? All right. So if you just call into the conference call so we could walk through some of this, especially with the essay. When we're talking about the essay, there's definitely going to be points where you're going to be asking questions, and I want to make sure that I can address that at that moment without moving on and then getting people more confused. Okay, so I know that Ruth walked over to get some breakfast. I haven't heard from Danny yet. Um, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and call in the line, and then let's get this going. Okay. We're going to begin to work this out here in a moment. All right. So we're trying to get, so waiting on one more person as we start to get rolling. I'm restarting my phone. I don't know why it won't let me dial out for the conference call. But let's start working this out. So let me put that problem back up. Let's go right back to the beginning. Y minus 4 equals negative 2 x plus 3. Okay. So there's a couple of ways to do this, but let's stick with working everything in the parentheses. All right. They told us what the x equals. And in this case, the x has a value of negative 3. So we know x is negative 3. Okay. So we have negative 3 plus 3, which gives me nothing. And the entire time, I'm going to be multiplying that by negative 2. I know I'm writing a little fast. All I'm doing is just working my way down, right? Trying to get everything by itself. So negative 2 times 0 is 0. Y minus 4. Well, like always, we're trying to get everything, we're trying to get all the whole numbers on one side and the variable on the other. So how am I going to do that? By adding 4. And I'm left with y equals 4. Questions? No questions? I know that um, somebody did not get positive 4, so I want to know where we got a little sidetracked. Yeah. So like that's why I always like breaking down towards a pyramid. Yeah. So the easiest way to do that. So it looks like the numeracy is there now. Is we need to work towards getting everything alone, right? So when we go here, we're still trying to get rid of everything on this side, right? So that's the first place I look at. If you notice, I didn't touch anything on the other side. Eliminated on this side, right? So I got all the numbers. I used as many inverse operations as I could to get this alone, right? So if it's 3 and negative 3, right? So let's just say that you decided to multiply it in there. And this is kind of a little bit more of a math trick than anything. But so let's say it's y minus 4 equals negative 2 and what was that? Negative 3? I'm not mistaken. Negative 3. So if it's negative 3 plus 3, it's pretty much be the same thing, right? Y minus 4 equals positive 6, right? Because 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Negative 2 times positive 3 is negative 6. So right there alone, I could cancel out everything, right? Because 6 minus 6 is 0. right? So right here alone, I would know that I would be stuck with y minus 4 equals 0. Add 4 to both sides to get the variable and the whole number on opposite sides. Still get y is 4. Right? And there's a couple of ways. Yeah. And there's a couple of ways to do it. Let's say you're not comfortable with that, right? Let's say if we add 4 here, add 4 there. Now we're left with y equals 6 plus 4. You can kind of keep going back and forth, right? And then subtract out the 4. Go to this side again. Y minus 4 equals 6. Actually, yeah. Subtract out the 6. Y minus 6 equals 4. Subtract the 4. Then you're left with y. Wait, no. Hold on. I'm trying to do it as many different ways as I possibly can. So, oh, that's true. I could even just do y plus 4 plus 4. Let's say I do plus 4 on this side. Y equals 10 minus 6. Subtract 6. Still get 4. So there's already like 2 or 3 different ways to solve that. I would stick with that. I would do everything in the parentheses. Because if you're doing the FOIL method, first in out last, that's not going to be as helpful. I would stick with one method, and that would be just doing everything in the parentheses and working outwards. That's also going to help you when you do order of operations. So instead of having to rely on like some other math tricks, if you get used to doing the parentheses first, when we get to order of operations, it'll make more sense to you and it'll click more because you're used to doing that. So I'd recommend sticking with the parentheses. See if I can get the conference call going. I don't know why my phone is not cooperating. Technology. Let's try to get this conference call together. There we go. Okay. Yeah, the parentheses is a good way to do it. Oh yeah, my phone. I'm on there now though. If you want to join, sorry, it would not let me connect and stay connected. So, but I'm on there now, and it's going to be a lot easier when we're talking about writing. So, I'll give everybody a chance to join. If we're comfortable with this will conclude our math portion. If not, we can do another problem. But if we're comfortable, we're going to move on to writing. Hello?
Hi, Sylvie.
Hey. All right. Okay, so we're still waiting on a few more people to join. Believe me, we're going to have a lot of questions on the writing, and it's going to be a lot easier if we all join the conference call. I know some people can't, but I know 3 out of the 4 can. Yeah, come on, guys. The essay is another one. The two areas that people struggle with is the math and the writing. And I'm going to give you the easiest way to think about the writing. I have never had anybody not pass a reading or writing in my class. Never had anybody take it and fail it. Math, same thing. 80% of my people are always showing improvement on the tape test. And I average at least 3 or 4 people passing on their high school equivalency. And my classes are only like 8 people. Sometimes, actually, probably averaging less than that. Yeah, but you guys want to pass. Even if she asked the good questions, everybody's going to pass. I know that Danny can. I understand the international call. But I should be able to get Lillian. I should be able to get Roof. I should be able to get um who else is on here? Yeah, should be able to get Lillian. Should be able to get Roof. No, Danny can't. Yeah, this is definitely a time to take control of your future, right? Be able to ask the questions. Perfect. I'll put that number right back up for you. And I also put on the board. Let me erase everything else. Yes. All right. Who just joined?
I did. I'm here.
All right.
It's Lily.
Perfect. Okay.
Lily. Hi.
All right. Okay. Oh, and just had somebody else join.
Okay.
Who was that?
Ruth.
Perfect. Okay. So the first thing we need to talk about are the 4 types of writing. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about a template. Okay. There's definitely going to be a lot of questions, given that it's going to seem like it's a lot to memorize or a lot to understand, but once you start looking at the practice essay questions, it'll make more sense. So the first type is going to be expository writing. All right, these are the 4 types of writing. Yeah, let me write that a little lower. 4 types of writing. Just going to make more space. So we're going to have expository. And expository, think about in expository writing, like if you were to write about your trip to like the Grand Canyon, it's almost like in the explaining, giving information, right? Some of these are going to sound very similar, which is why you're not going to see all of them on the test. All right. And I'm going to give you guys a better example once I'm done writing all of these. All right. Persuasive. This is what you will see on the test. This is what I want to say 99% of your essays will be on persuasive writing. Then you have descriptive. And you know what persuasive is. We've been talking about it. You're trying to convince somebody. And if you are asked to write an essay, you're reading a text, you know they're taking both sides on something, start taking notes, underlining, coming up with a plan on which side you're going to take. Right? And the narrative writing is going to be a personal story. Right? Give you guys a chance to write that down. Yeah. So remember, expository writing, that's going to be pretty much informational text, right? So it's going to be information that you're giving out. And it's not a personal story. So it's going to be literally the steps. Like if I went to the Grand Canyon and I was writing about what I know about the Grand Canyon, I'm listing out the history of the Grand Canyon, why this trail exists, etc. That's going to be expository. Persuasive is trying to convince someone, right? Trying to prove your argument. You cannot pick both sides. Everyone always asks that. If you're neutral, you're going to fail the writing portion of the test. Descriptive, exactly what it sounds like. Describe. Narrative is going to be a personal story, and it's normally going to be fiction. It's not always fiction, but it's normally going to be. Questions on that?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So, expository writing is going to be listing out steps. It's going to be informational, not a story. So, here are the steps to how the Grand Canyon became a tourist hotspot. Here are the steps to recycling, right? Persuasive writing, you're trying to prove an argument. Descriptive writing, you're describing. Narrative writing is a personal story. It's going to follow all of those elements we talked about, those plot elements, exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. That's going to be important in narrative writing. You need to follow all of those. So there's going to be a lot of templates. Okay. So the template that I'm going to give you will work for all of these. Okay. It's going to work for 75%. All right. The template will work for. So odds are you're going to get persuasive writing, but even if you don't, the template's still going to work for these. Now, for narrative writing, there is not an exact template because it's a story. But what you do need to use are the plot elements. And I gave you guys the PowerPoint on that. So you have to be able to hit every single part of what we would normally expect a story to do, right? You need to have conflict. The conflict needs to be conflict that people are used to seeing, things like that.
What does the narrative writing says? Personal story, that is. I can't read it on the bottom of this.
Oh, okay. A personal story that is almost always fiction. Because even when, like, someone, for example, writes their autobiography, if it's a book or if it's a movie, they still include the same elements. They still want to describe the setting. They're going to change the characters a little bit to be more interesting. They're going to have a problem in the story that fits into the conflict that we know of. So even when it's like a personal story, it's still going to have elements of fiction. So, for example, I think, what was it? American Sniper, the story of the Navy SEAL who had the most amount of kills in Iraq. Um, they really tried to stick to his life story, but there's things that just have to be changed because it's a movie. So maybe the way that I know in watching an interview with his wife, they changed the way they met. Um, they kind of made some of his problems worse in some areas and less in others because it made the movie flow better. So that's why I always say it's pretty much going to be fiction, even when it's supposed to be based on a true story, because people are used to watching that, right? In this country, we're used to seeing a problem we can identify with, that it gets fixed in the end, and that everything makes sense. That's normally the order that they like. Questions on that? Okay. So we're going to talk about all the things you need now in an essay. So remember, this template is going to work for 75% of the writing that you're going to that you're going to be doing. And what's the most common essay you're going to be writing? What type of writing are we going to be using for the essay? The most common?
Narrative?
No. Persuasive.
Decisive?
Persuasive, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Most of your essays for the test are going to be persuasive. And how do you know, based off what you read, how do you know it's going to be a persuasive essay?
We need to pick a side.
Yeah.
And try to prove our argument.
So as soon as you read and what you're reading, they're starting to pick sides. This is why we need cell phones in class, or this is why we don't need cell phones in class. You already know your essay is going to be persuasive. Pick a side. Pick whatever's going to be easiest to defend. All right. So the first thing.
How many paragraphs are we going to be required to write on the essay?
All essays at a minimum should be 5 paragraphs. So I'm going to give you the easiest way to make it flow. And then I'll send you guys an invitation into Class Kick. For everyone else who's on the conference call, I know that Danny is usually using a cell phone, so she could maybe send me a picture. But is everybody else capable of logging onto Class Kick and typing out, if we have time, we should have time to do it today, to type out a question? Like,
Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right. So the very first thing we want to start off with is a hook. And that's going to work for, like I said, 75% of your writing. You need to start off with a hook. A hook is getting someone's attention. Okay? How do we get somebody's attention? There's a couple of ways to do that. Right? You can start off with a quick personal story. We call that an anecdotal story.
We can't see the writing. The board is on the top.
See, I love that. See, now I can make an adjustment really fast. Okay. So quick personal story is a good way to do it.
Thank you.
Very welcome. All right. So if they're asking you to write about whether we should have cell phones in class, introduce your essay with a quick personal story. So it could be something like, ring, ring, my cell phone went off in class and disrupted the whole class. You're catching people's attention. Not that it's proven that everyone's going to find that interesting, but you're showing the person grading your paper, you know you're supposed to do that. Ring, ring, my phone went off in class and interrupted everybody or interrupted instruction, right? That's a great way to get their attention. And now you're starting to let the reader know we're talking about cell phones. And with that example, you're letting them know that they're bad because it interrupted class. So you can use a quick personal story. And you want to use sound words, otherwise known as onomatopoeia. All right, sound word. That's why I said ring, ring. So onomatopoeia is an example of that is like if you're cooking bacon on the stove, what sound does the bacon make? Yeah. So, and that's because the bacon literally sounds like that, right? It literally goes. So that's why we call it a sizzling sound, because we're literally just calling it the sound it makes. It's like if you read the Batman comic books, when he hits somebody and he goes, bam. Well, yeah, because it sounds like bam. Splat sounds like the word splat. So you want to start off with a sound word like that. It's a way of hitting every single part of the writing rubric. Because as teachers, when we grade your essays, they have a rubric and they need to be able to check off, okay, did you have a hook? Did you have a thesis? So even if it's corny and it's fake, let's say you just completely made up that story about your cell phone going off in class, they can now give you points. And that's where people lose out. They write these really long stories, write these really long narratives, and they're not hitting any part of those boxes, and that's what gets them in trouble. So that's why we look to purposely hit every single part. Question so far? Okay. So now, after that, after your hook, your next sentence needs to be a transition. Your next sentence needs to be a transition. And what I mean is, we're talking about cell phones being bad in school. I picked a side, right? Cell phones are bad. So I need to move away from my little personal story about my cell phone going off in class, and I need to set up the fact that cell phones are bad for schools, right? So I need to transition. Okay? So transition, the goal with your transition is to set up your thesis. You need to set up your thesis. You need to set up what the whole essay is going to be about. Okay? So that's your first sentence. This is sentence number 1. Sentence number 2. Sentence number 3 is your thesis. This is the most important sentence out of your whole essay. Your whole essay. Okay? Now, your thesis needs to list 3 reasons or topics that your whole essay is going to be about. All right, here's what I mean. So if I'm writing about cell phones being bad in school, ring, ring, my cell phone went off in school and interrupted the whole class. Cell phones have no place in the classroom. Now, that's my transition. I need to now set up the 3 reasons why we don't need a cell phone in class, why they're bad. So I need to use the sentence or use the commas in a series to list out the reasons why we shouldn't have them, right? So I should say something like, cell phones should not be in the class because they cause interruptions, students use them to bully each other, and they're used for cheating, right? So I need to have a sentence that lists those things out. That way the person grading the essay knows you're going to only talk about those 3 things. So you're going to have a paragraph on each one of those things. A paragraph is 5 sentences long. Does that make sense so far?
Each of the three reasons need their own paragraph.
Correct. And the reason we do that is because it's super easy to follow. Right? You'll have some other teachers that will just tell you to write, but the problem is, again, there is a rubric. There's a grading sheet. I'm actually, I can send that out to you guys. Let me see if I can send out a sample grading rubric for high school.
This commas in a series, meaning first list the three and then talk about the three.
Correct.
Usually in
So,
different
yep.
parts.
Yep. So you're going to list it out. We need to get away from this because this is all in our introductory paragraph. It's all in our sample introductory paragraph. So we need to then set up our body paragraphs. And then we're going to have a conclusion paragraph. That's how you end up with 5. Introduction, 3 body, conclusion. Let's see if I can get a good. Trying to send one out so you guys can see what they use to grade. No, that's not going to be a good one. No, that's not it. Because I do have some, but it won't let me send it the way I want to most of the time. Okay, I think I got a link. Link copied. So I'm going to send out an example of a rubric. So if you check out what I just said on the live chat, that gives you the rubric. So again, when teachers tell you things like, oh, just write, or they give you very simple ways to look at it, not to say this isn't simple, but what I've noticed is that when it comes to that rubric, if you don't make it obvious that you're doing what they ask you to do, you lose points. So if you clearly have 5 paragraphs, it's going to be easy for them to follow it. If you straight up tell them what you're going to talk about, there's no way they can say you don't have a thesis. They can't say your thesis isn't clear. In fact, your first body paragraph should be the very first thing you talked about in your thesis. And your second body paragraph should be the very second thing you talked about in your thesis. And the third should be the third. Make everything easy to follow so you don't lose points on your writing. If English isn't your first language, if you're not used to writing, this is super easy to follow, right? And it's something you can refer back to when you're testing. All right. So I have my hook, I have my transition, I have my thesis. Now I need to transition away. All right. So I gave you my 3 reasons. I need now to move on, right? So I need to say something like, cell phones are a serious problem in school. Then after that, I need to set up my first point. So if my first point was that cell phones are a class interruption, I need to say that here in a way that lets the reader know I'm going to give you a whole bunch of reasons, a whole paragraph on why cell phones are an interruption. So it's easy for them to follow my logic, right? And if you notice, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences. Every paragraph is 5 sentences. Questions on that so far?
No question.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to create, I'm probably going to actually just recycle one of the old Class Kick assignments. and I'm going to ask you to create your own introductory paragraph. I want you to stick with cell phones not being in the class, or whatever side. Doesn't really matter to me. Should we have cell phones in the class? That's what we're going to write a quick paragraph about. Should we have cell phones? And when we get to the point where we're trying to prove that we shouldn't, you guys can make up whatever study, whatever numbers you want. You can say 90% of students who have a cell phone in class are passing their test, or, a study from UNLV showed that 60% of students with a cell phone bully other students, or whatever. You can make up whatever facts you want to when we move on, because when you're taking the actual test, the facts will be there for you. So I'm going to post that up in the live chat. And again, I know that not everybody has access to a computer. So,
Are we going to do it on Classcake?
Correct. But if you don't have access to a computer, feel free to write it on a sheet of paper. Just text me a picture of what you're writing so I can see that you know what you're doing.
How do we get into Classcake?
So I'm going to send you a link, and it's going to give you the code to get in. We've used it before. It's going to be one of the codes we used before. But this way you can write. I can see what you're writing in Classcake, which is good. And at the same time, you can also ask a question out loud. So you'll have multiple ways to ask for feedback.
Thank you.
Very welcome. All right, so I just sent out the link. The code is in the link, but I'm going to also send out the code as a separate message. We'll go back to Classcake.
Yeah, babe.
It's going to be the third page as well. And once you've logged on, let me know, because I'm going to start eliminating all the old students that are still on here, so I can just see who the people who are actually.
I'm logged on. Are we doing the third page?
The third page, yeah. It just says, please write an essay on.
Okay.
Yeah. So I see one person, two people.
Do you see us by name, or?
If you typed in where it said name, if you typed in name, then I would see it. Okay. Lillian, do you have access to a computer?
Let me take my glasses off real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Jada, can I use the computer just for a little bit, and you use my other phone, okay? Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to work. Okay. So you got 3 pebbles, babe. writing a first paragraph?
Correct. And here's the
Or
outlines.
what was it?
So it's about whether schools should allow cell phones in class. That's pretty much almost exactly what you're going to get when you actually take the test. It's always like, should schools have uniforms? Because everybody has background knowledge on going to school. Should students be allowed to have cell phones? So I always stick with the same boring, like, essay topics.
Do I go into Classic Home?
Yeah, so if you just Google ClassKick and actually sends a link through the live chat, a direct link, that'll probably be your easiest bet. In the live chat, click on the link that I sent out, and it'll take you to it. And then you type in your name, and you'll be good to go.
Okay, I don't have sorry guys, I don't have YouTube on my computer that I'm logged into.
Oh, okay. I should be able to send you the link directly here.
Yeah, but I'm not logged into it, honey. It's only on my phone that I'm logged in.
To my YouTube?
Uh-huh.
No. ClassKick is a separate program, so I'm going to send you the link to your phone.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's see, and give me the first 3 digits of your phone number. I know I have it in here on my phone somewhere.
481.
Okay. Let's see. E22. Yep. So if you go to classkick.com, the code to join this assignment is E22R28. Perfect. Yep. If you handwrite and send me a pic, I can look at that as well. And it's always essays are always 5 paragraphs long, but we're just focusing on the first paragraph, known as the introductory paragraph.
You know what? I'll just write it.
And send a pic?
Write it and I'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That way I'm not holding it. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
The introductory.
So the writing prompt is, should schools allow cell phones in class? All right, let's go back to ClassKick. Let's see what we got.
Welcome.
When I want to mention that we all learned how to use semicolons and commas, I definitely want to see that in everything we're writing. I can see some people are starting to use that. That is awesome. Okay. So as people are writing, I'm starting to notice that we just kind of jump into answering the question. Remember, you want to hit all of these. I even sent out the rubric. You want to make sure you're using a clear hook, a clear transition, and a clear thesis. You don't want to just start off answering it because you'll lose points in those areas. We want to hit every single thing on that rubric.
Okay, I know my point's kind of weak, but
Oh, that's okay because you're just making it up.
you done there?
Yeah. And as you're writing, think about that. If you're like, oh man, I should have a better point. When you're reading, because you're going to have a reading prompt and a writing prompt for the essay. When you're reading, think about that. If someone's trying to prove that that the earth is flat, or that someone's trying to prove that we should recycle, or that we shouldn't have advertising on TV, that it should be, it's bad for kids or something like that. And they're trying to argue both sides. If you know the points that they're making are not strong or don't really have as much weight to them because it's more like their opinion than any kind of study or a fact, then I would remind myself I probably don't want to defend that because they had a tough time proving their point. Let me stick to the things that I can easily prove with evidence, examples that people can follow, things like that.
I have a question.
Yes.
does the transition, the second paragraph, need to also be a full paragraph? Does it need to be rounded up to 5 sentences?
No, so all of this is one paragraph. Everything you see here, this is your introductory paragraph. So you should have about 1 or 2 sentences for your hook, about 1 or 2 sentences for your transition, really 1 sentence for your thesis, and then 1 sentence for your second transition, and 1 sentence when you're setting up your first point.
Okay. Thank you.
Very welcome. Great. Okay. So this is one of the responses that I got, which I really liked, and I wanted to share this with the class. I don't want to erase the template, but okay, so it says, back in my day, we didn't have cell phones. I don't believe students should be allowed to have cell phones in class. And this is where they set up their thesis perfectly, and I love this. They are a big distraction, so that's good. If you were actually writing an essay, you would have a bunch of examples of the distractions. I'm sure you can provide a bunch of your own examples of distractions that people can follow. It makes cheating easier, and mostly it's just not necessary. So I know I would like that third point to be a little stronger, but you could argue that. You could argue that it doesn't help for anything, doesn't actually help anything in the classroom. But what I really liked about that is that every every part of their thesis was easy to follow. I can easily check mark that off of a rubric, right? Kids aren't responsible enough to have phones in class. There are already enough distractions as it is, so why add another? And that's perfect. You're setting up the fact that your next paragraph, your paragraph 2, is going to be all about these distractions, right? And I'm sure there's a million ways you can talk about distractions. So again, you make it easy for that person who is grading your paper to follow everything that you're saying. And this person stuck to about 1 sentence for each hook, transition, thesis, transition, set up the first point. And they start off with that quick personal story to get their attention. Hey, back in my day, we didn't have to worry about that. We didn't have cell phones, right? Perfect. And I'm sure this goes without saying, you can always lie. So even if you did have cell phones in school, if it just proves your point that we shouldn't have them by saying that when you were young or when you were in high school, they didn't exist, that's fine.
I agree. That was a good one.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what else we got. Okay. So one thing I want to make sure that is clear with the thesis. In the thesis, you want to address whatever the writing prompt is, you want to address it directly. So if they're asking you, should we use cell phones in school? Right there, you want to say, no, we should not use cell phones in school and list out those reasons, right? So in the first writing sample that I got, that was evident, right? They straight up said that we should not, all right? So in your thesis, make that clear. Either we should have cell phones and give me a bunch of reasons why that's a good thing, or we should not, right? But you want to make it clear and give me your 3 reasons on why and have it be all in 1 sentence. That's going to help you with the writing rubric. It also shows that you know how to create a complex sentence, and it's going to get the rest of your essay structure. Let's see. Okay. Just looking at some of these. Okay, got that. Mm. Okay. Yeah. So remember, we don't want to just come out straight out and say that we don't want cell phones, right? Because that would imply that we don't know how to write an essay. Because you're going to get questions where it's a simple like paragraph response, and the person grading your paper wants to know that you are understanding that an essay is 5 paragraphs and you need a hook, you need to have a thesis. So don't just start off by saying that we do or do not need cell phones. You got to set it up. You got to use a hook, right? You have to get the reader's attention. You can say ring, ring, or, you know, bang, my cell phone fell out of my pocket, or whichever side you're choosing that we should or we shouldn't have it. Start off with that personal story. Start off with um, that sound word, that onomatopoeia. You know, I wonder if it'll let me actually post that rubric onto ClassKick. You don't have to add a sound word, but it is like that perfect cookie cutter box thing to do. Think about the sound that is associated with cell phones, like ringing. If you want to be safe and stick with a sound word that you can use pretty much no matter what, bang is a good one, right? So bang, your cell phone fell out of your pocket in the middle of class, you know. Or you could say something like, you know, um, bang, I slammed my cell phone on the table um, so that I could give it to my teacher. They caught me cheating or something. Or if you want to use a good example and you want to use bang or splat, you know, bang, my teacher passed out in class and somebody had to call the ambulance and I had my cell phone on me. So the only reason we want to use those sound words is because that's like the first thing on the rubric. Did they hook your attention? And there's no way to prove that a sound word is going to get everybody's attention, but it's what a teacher would expect you to do, right? It's what the person grading would expect you to use. So you want to start by getting their attention. Let's see if I can find that. I want to actually send out I'll put a copy of that rubric. So wait for everybody to finish up. Then we're going to talk about the second. Perfect. Found one. Okay. So I'm going to upload this onto ClassKick. Wonder if I can save it as something else so you guys can see it. I should be able to email it too. So I'm going to email out a copy of the writing rubric, and then I'm going to post. I'm going to post it in ClassKick so you guys can see what the rubric looks like. Any questions? Because I do see that some people have not responded yet or made adjustments. I haven't got any new text messages. I don't see anything new in ClassKick. So if you look at the next page in ClassKick, I just posted up the writing rubric. So this is an example of how your essay is going to be graded. So you're going to see things in there about organization, goals, thesis, reasons and support, attention to audience, right? Argument demonstrates a clear understanding of the potential audience and anticipates counter arguments, right? So you want to show that you're getting their attention. You want to show that you're after you get their attention that you're proving your point against what other people would try to take away from you. And under organization maintains the interest of the audience. We can't prove everyone's going to find something interesting, but when you do the hook, you're going to get that point.
Is there a way to print this out?
Yeah, you know what? Let me email it to.
I don't know how.
Yeah, let me email it out to everybody so everybody can print it out.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm trying to print it, but only half the page comes up in my printer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. One sec. I'm not on the live chat just yet, so if you're sending me a message, bear with me a moment. I'm in the middle of emailing out the rubric. Okay, so I just sent that out. Didn't see anything in the live chat. Okay. I'm going to go back to viewing work. And I know that some of you guys are actually ready to move on to the first paragraph. Okay. Oh, okay. And I don't know what happened. Roof, are you still on the line? Because I haven't seen anything yet. I haven't seen.
Yeah, sorry. Since my daughter woke up, I'm trying to get her calm. I can come back to the computer.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, she left. Okay, no worries.
Yeah. No, yeah. I have like the headphones in my ear, and I'm like walking back and forth trying to get her changed and stuff before I can come back. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Okay. So let me look at one more. And
Does the 5 sentences need to be in
together?
the 3 reasons?
Yeah, the 3 reasons needs to be one
Yeah.
sentence. Yeah, the 3 reasons needs to be one sentence, and I would try to stay away from like asking a question within the essay. So I would just try to stick to trying to prove that they shouldn't have cell phones. So you want to have all of your points together, and your thesis needs to clearly state it by using commas in a series.
Okay. I'm a little confused on listing the reasons, but I do need to explain all 3 reasons.
In a body paragraph, yeah.
The body that has to be more than 5 sentences.
It can be more, but at a minimum, it has to be 5. These should be for everyone. Okay. So I'm actually going to respond. I'm actually going to erase this, and I'm going to show you how I would write it out. I think that might help you out with the thesis and everything else. If you have a way of bringing up the essay, if you have a way of bringing up the rubric, after I write this, I want to go through and look at the rubric and see how many points I would get. Right? So that we understand how we're going to be graded and why we write the way that we do, right? So the first thing I'm going to start off with is the hook. Ring, ring. Right? My cell phone went off in class. Right? This is what is known as my hook. Okay. Now I need to transition, right? Cell phones have no place in the classroom. This is my transition. So notice, I got their attention with the hook. Now I'm setting up my thesis, right? Moving on towards my thesis. Now I need to tell them straight out why they have no place in the classroom, right? So I can say something like cell phones in the classroom, or cell phones should not be in the classroom. Because they, now I'm going to start listing out all my reasons. Help students bully each other. Comma. Distract the class, comma, and helps students cheat. All right. So that is my thesis. The person reading this and grading this now knows every point I'm trying to prove, right? They help students bully each other. They distract the class. So that's point 2, point 1, and point 3. It helps students cheat. Now I need to move away from that and start setting up my very first point. They help students bully each other, right? Cell phones in class can be dangerous. Right? Students like to take mean pictures of each other with their cell phones in class. So now I'm setting up the fact that they're being mean to each other with the cell phones, which is going to help me set up them bullying each other. Yeah, I did not hear anything like that.
What is the number 3? Is that part of the thesis?
Yes, help students cheat.
Oh, okay. Not the listing. Okay.
Any questions about that so
So
far?
this should all be the first paragraph, correct?
Yes, this is the introductory paragraph. So any part of this that is confusing or may not be easy to understand, not clear. So is it clear now where I want to have the hook, the transition, the thesis, setting up my first point? Okay. Let's look at the writing rubric for persuasive writing. So if you have the ability to pull that up, let me know. Okay. And I wish there was a way to mirror the screen. I'm going to figure that out. So if you look at the writing rubric, Under organization, to get 4 points, you need the introduction. The introduction is inviting. Well, how do we know the introduction is inviting? I gave you a clear hook. Ring, ring, and I gave you a personal story. So I'm going to get that. And provides an overview of the issue. Well, yeah, I'm letting you know we're talking about cell phones. All of that was done in my first sentence. Information is presented in a logical order and maintains the interest of the audience. The conclusion strongly states a personal opinion. Well, we're not at the conclusion yet, but I hit all of that, right? Anybody who's going to be reading my essay can logically follow everything I'm trying to prove. Right? So this shows that I would get all 4 points, and I'm not even done with the essay yet. Let's look at goals or thesis. This is a whole separate thing to get 4 points there. There is one goal or thesis that is strongly and clearly states a personal opinion and identifies the issue. Right? So I literally said cell phones should not be in the classroom. So I'm letting you know what the issue is, and I'm clearly telling you the things that we need to do to fix them. All right. So that would give me 4 points. Reason to support. 3 or more excellent reasons are stated with good support. It is evident that a lot of thought and research was put into the assignment. Well, evidence and like about thought and research, all of that, whatever. Nobody can really prove. But what you want to do is use evidence from the text so that you can get points showing, hey, what you gave me, I used, right? And 3 or more excellent reasons, that's going to be in our 3 body paragraphs. And from the introductory paragraph, it's clear what each paragraph is going to be about. It's right there, and I'm telling you the first thing, the second thing, and the third thing, right? Attention to audience. Argument demonstrates a clear understanding of the potential audience and anticipates counter arguments. Well, I'm going to get a chance to do that when I write my body paragraphs. So all the good things people can say about cell phones, like if you don't have the internet or you don't have enough computers in the classroom, a cell phone can let students go on the internet when they need to do homework. It could be a computer when you're short on technology, right? I can find a way to argue against all of that by talking about in the essay. Okay. Now, when we look at word choice is creative and enhances the argument. Easiest way to hit that, like I mentioned before, use as many vocabulary terms from the text as you possibly can. That's why you also want to say according to the text. That's how you can ensure that you're using the right words, that you are being creative. Why? Because you're using evidence. All right. Visuals are appealing. We're not going to worry about that. There are no errors in grammar, mechanics, and or spelling. We'll probably misspell something. On the essay, that's not going to completely kill you. Right? If you notice that that's only one section of the rubric. Your organization and your structure will destroy your essay if it's not on point. If you have a couple of misspelled words, let's say you try to use a semicolon and that one sentence or 2 sentences that the semicolon was used is not perfect, that's not going to kill you, right? That's really 4 points. If you look at organization is like 20 points between the goals, the support, the word choice, the delivery. All of those things add up. Questions on that so far? Okay. So now we're going to move on to our first body paragraph. So our first body paragraph is going to be all about, from when I wrote up earlier, the first point was that the students could use it to cheat, right? So whatever the first point was in your thesis, that needs to be what your whole paragraph is about. And there's an easy way to structure it. It's called the Jane Schaefer method of writing. So your first sentence in your body paragraph, all right, your first sentence in your body paragraph needs to be a concrete detail. All right. Actually, you know what? You're going to introduce your first point. Let's just start off there. Introduce your first point. You're going to straight up say, hey, they can cheat, right? In your second sentence, I need to bring up a concrete fact, something that can be proven, right? So we're going to call this a concrete detail or evidence. Concrete detail / evidence. Obviously, we're not looking at anything yet. We're not reading anything. There's no video because that's not the point of this today. But when you're taking the test, you will have read an essay, you will have read or seen a video. So getting the concrete evidence is not going to be that difficult. You're going to have things to refer back to. Remember, try to stay away from your own opinion when you know that it's not going to be something that is proven all the time or is like a one-off story. Like, yes, people can smoke and live to be 90 years old. That doesn't mean that that's usually what's going to happen to people who when they smoke, right? So try to stick with concrete details, evidence from the text. If you're going to use your personal opinion, then again, stick with something that would logically make sense, right? Hey, although some people can smoke and live long lives, most people won't if they smoke. That kind of example, right? Although not everybody uses their cell phone to bully other people, it's too tempting, right? It's too easy. Third sentence, right? Here's where you actually want to put in some support for it, right? So you can actually switch these. You can start off with your own personal experience or kind of using an example and then back it up with evidence, or use evidence and then give an example. Doesn't really matter, right? But you do want to give an example. This can be a hypothetical example. It can be a short personal story. But again, it all has to be supported by your evidence. It all has to be supported by your evidence, right? And you want to give at least 2, right? So you want to have your concrete and you have your example. And then again, you want to go with another piece of concrete evidence. Right? Then you want to have, again, another personal story, an example. Right? Some of you guys might find it easier to start off with like setting up your evidence, setting up your personal example. That might be easier. To each their own. As long as you're following this, it's going to be worth your while. Another example, right? And then in your fifth sentence, you need to set up your second point. So I believe my second point was so the students can cheat, and the second point was that there's like a distraction, I think is what I wrote. So I would say that, right? So even if the students are perfect angels, they don't take mean pictures or post mean comments on Facebook, they're not paying attention because they're playing with their phones, right? I need to say something like that in my last sentence here, because now I'm letting the reader know we're going to move away from them cheating and talking about being distracted. Questions on that?
No.
Okay. So now that most of you started your introduction, I gave you guys some feedback. I want to see your introductory paragraph and your first body paragraph. So I want to see that you did class kick, send me a pic, however you want to do that. I need your introduction and your first body paragraph. So I'm going to leave this template up. I'm going to walk away from the computer for 1 sec. I'm going to come right back. And again, send me messages uh, with your writing. Feel free to send me a pic. And if you're in class kick, let me know. And I will be responding to your comments there. I see that it shows me in Classic when you're on the screen, but I don't know if that just means you left off there or if you're actively on the screen or not. All right. Okay. All right. Are we still there? It says that it's unable to connect to the chat. So looks like the line's all we're going to have. It says the chat is disconnected. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay. Ooh, I like this. Okay. So let's make this all one sentence. Okay, much better on that. Okay. Do I still have everyone here on the conference call?
Yes, I'm still here. I just have it on mute.
Okay. All right. So I haven't seen anybody's first paragraph yet. I've seen some people went back and changed. I mean, second paragraph. I saw some people went back and changed their introductory paragraph. Okay. Okay. So we could, so far, most of what I've seen for the introductory paragraph is good. So please move on to the first body paragraph. Man, okay. Okay. All right. So Rufus starting type. Let's see. LD starting. Yes. Yeah. If you send me your first body paragraph and it looks good, you hear from me. Go ahead and start on your second. I got about 20 minutes left. Okay. So I see that most of you are still working on your first body paragraph. That's okay. We're going to come back to this all throughout next week. I did want to share with you another great example. So cell phones, this is going to be a good example of the first body paragraph. In fact, I'm going to read it from the beginning because I think this is a great example of how thoughts and ideas can flow logically. Okay. Back in my day, we didn't have cell phones. I don't believe students should be allowed to have cell phones in class. They are a big distraction. It makes cheating easier. Sorry, I had a laugh. My girlfriend just brought coffee because we're going crazy being in the house all day. They are a big distraction. It makes cheating easier, and mostly because it's just not necessary. Kids aren't responsible enough to have phones in class. There are already enough distractions as it is. So why add another? Right. So you can see there, we're talking clearly about cell phones. They're bad. We don't need them in class. And she just started listing out those reasons, right? Cell phones are a big distraction in our classes today. Students are more interested in all that's happening on the phone um, than what teachers are teaching. So there's a couple of things we could do with sentences here, like with using those commas and the semicolons we talked about, using introductory commas, especially some separating the important from the non-important commas. All right. But that's okay because when you write your essay, you're going to go back and edit it. So you're going to go back and look at what you wrote and then see what could have been eliminated, moved around, what have you. Right. Okay. And it says here, students are more interested in all that's happening on the phone than what teachers are teaching. Students are checking social media or texting with friends. If their heads are down on the phones, they can't see what's happening up in the front of the class. If they don't know what's going on in class, now they need to cheat to keep it up or to make it up, right? So, organizationally, that is great, right? There's a couple of things I'd want to do with the sentences. I would want to add in some commas and I would want to break some of those sentences up. But organizationally, getting your thoughts on paper, that flows smoothly. And she's transitioning from the very first point in her thesis that it's a distraction. She's tying that directly to cheating. And that is very easy to follow. If you're not paying attention and you don't want to fail, then you're going to cheat. Great way to link your introductory paragraph with your first body paragraph. And now she's linking it with her second body paragraph because she's talking about cheating, right? So, and think about the fact that this would even be easier when you have facts that are given to you, right? And what I mean by that is when you do this on the test, you're going to be provided with a video, you're going to be provided with a text that you're looking at, and they're purposely going to pick things that can be proven with studies and examples and analysis, right? This is all coming from you guys. All right. So when we continue to work on this, I'm going to give you more text and videos so you have things to reference. So great piece of writing. Only thing I would challenge on is to watch the punctuation, add in some commas because there's some places there where it's like a run-on sentence. And I would also challenge everybody writing to make up statistics. Okay. Because the more you get used to saying, according to this study, or according to the text, according to the video, the easier it's going to be when this is for real and you have things to look at. It'll seem more natural. I know it's a little weird to make up the numbers, but that gets your brain thinking about what tools do you actually have to prove your point, right? What does make the most sense? So we're not just relying on opinion. All right. The live chat is still down. I'm not sure why. So I know that the conference call is going to be what we're going to be relying on. Any questions so far? We got about 15 minutes left.
No,
Hello? Hello?
no question.
No questions? Okay. So I believe that's Ildi, right? I'm trying to learn your guys' voices. That was Ildi? Ildi?
Yes,
All right. I know Ruth is on here. Lillian is on here. Any questions from you guys?
I am. I'm just confused. Writing and reading hasn't really been my topic. I'm just like
I can guarantee you,
kind
you're
of
going to
confused
kill
and
it now.
lost. I'm understanding a little bit more. I also had to Google like what does it mean and what does that mean. But I'm getting it. It takes me time. I'm like a slow thinker, and then I start thinking and thinking and overthinking, and I
Oh,
overwhelm myself.
that is a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. So, in the crazy event that they don't ask you to write a persuasive essay, although I'm pretty confident it's going to be a persuasive essay, then think about when it comes to like a narrative essay, the one thing I always ask people to think about is go back to anything in your life that you're definitely passionate about or you have a lot of opinions on, right? So for me, whenever I have to write an essay and I start to do it for school, I always look at how can I change whatever the question is. If it's like a personal story, how can I change it to suit me and my experience in the military, or suit my experience in teaching, or suit my experience as having like an immigrant mother, right? And being the first person born in this country. So, because a lot of times, if you have a personal story, a narrative essay, it's going to be open ended. Like, what did you do in the summer? Or um, one of the ones I wrote not too long ago was, where do you go shop for groceries and why? So I quickly turned that into like shopping on a military base or something like that because I knew a lot about it. And because I knew a lot about it, it was easier to structure my ideas. They're probably not going to have you do a narrative. Odds are, I mean, people do, but odds are it's not going to be a narrative. So if you have trouble organizing your thoughts when you're just hit with like pages of information, then what I would recommend is to, as you're reading the writing prompt, start taking notes. Say, hey, this would be a great point for my body paragraph. This would be a great example of how to end my essay. Or I'm going to say this first, or I really want this to be about this experience that I had. So if you're reading and writing those notes down, that's called close reading. You're going to organize your thoughts as you're reading the essay, which means you'll take less time to organize it later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, because organizing the essay is, I would say, what probably gets people the most in the most amount of trouble, other than actually writing it. Organizing it, trying to figure out what you're going to start with, and brainstorming takes a lot of time. And because this test is all done pretty much in like hours on end and at one time, it's easy to have your brain like kind of shut down. And now you're like, I need to get all these thoughts together. And I'm on a time requirement, I'm on a time crunch. So I would always recommend doing all of it at the same time. As we read, take notes, break it down, start thinking about your essay. So you don't spend all that time when you're done reading, plotting everything together, you knock it out. And then when you're done writing, you can spend those extra 10 or 15 minutes that you have going back and revising, looking at misspelled words, punctuation issues, clarity, right? And that's something else I'd recommend. If for some reason you have a lot of time on your essay, pretty much use every minute on the essay. So if that's the last thing you're doing for testing that day, and you're like, oh, I have 10 minutes left, I should just submit it. I'd recommend just continuously going over it. You can never be too hard on yourself when it comes to your sentences and rewriting them and making them clearer. It never hurts. I would try to take it down to the bell. Any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you for that advice.
Yeah.
I really do overthink. Sometimes I sit and like, okay, what is the question asking me? And I just start to think, and then I start drawing things, and I don't know. My head's everywhere.
And that's common because the way that we test, you have to be focused on one thing the entire time. And studies have shown it's like for every year that you're alive, it's something crazy like that. That's like the amount of time that you can naturally give your undivided attention to something. So if you're like 30 years old, studies have shown that the most amount of like natural undivided attention you're going to give somebody is like 30 minutes. And before your mind kind of starts wandering. So when you write and you're getting your thoughts on paper, it lets you escape a little bit because you do need to think about your personal experience and tie it back to whatever you're writing. But it also keeps you focused enough to say, well, I'm going to think about this personal experience only as it relates to what I'm writing about. I'm not going to go off on a tangent. I'm not going to go off and get caught up with it. As we're reviewing, Googling examples like of what a thesis is and stuff like that, it never hurts because the goal here is to pass. So if you're seeing examples, if you're finding websites that are helpful or things that I've sent you that are helpful, rely on those. There's nothing wrong with it. As long as you're able to take what they gave you and run with it. Now that they gave you an example of what a body paragraph looks like, can you create one on your own? Especially if they gave you a template like, oh, we start off this way, or your body paragraph should look like this. If you can keep that, understand it, there's no reason why this should be difficult. Any other questions? All right. So I know that we have gone pretty much 3 hours straight, and I really want to thank those of you that have joined. So to finish up with some reading standards, I'm gonna send a link in the live chat, which I can't actually. Let me see. I'm gonna try to send a link to the live chat. How about that? And it's gonna be on a quick movie, right? You guys know the variety of movies that I normally watch, and I'm just gonna ask you to tell me what the theme, the setting, and the main idea of the movie is. We're gonna come back to that theme, setting, and the main idea. And then I want you to also tell me. So we're gonna do. I want you to tell me the theme, the setting, the main idea, and then I want to know all the plot elements. Right? Tell me what scene, what part of the movie is the exposition, the rising action, the climax, falling action, resolution, and I also want the conflict. All right, so I think there's enough here where I can get one person to answer each. So, okay. This film is 3 minutes long. So that should give us enough time to watch it and have this discussion. I'm going to see if I can maybe send it to the live chat, although it says it's unable to connect. Let's give it a shot. Did you guys see the message I sent out in the live chat?
Yeah, I can see it.
Click on that, watch it. We give it about 4 minutes to do that. We're going to come back and talk about this. All right, so that should have been enough time. Okay, so what was the setting of the story? Anybody can answer that. We'll go over by a few minutes. What was the setting of the story?
Apartment, hallway.
Good. And let's think about, obviously this is a horror film. So let's think about what they were trying to accomplish with the apartment. Is it big? Is it small? Is it well lit? Is it new? Is it old? Let's really break down the setting.
It was dark. It was lonely.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because it's dark. You only see him. The apartment is not doesn't have any, like, he doesn't have any pictures in his room, no kind of really like decorations or anything like that in his house, no kind of
Mhm.
personal touch, right? So we can infer, right? That's another reading standard. We can infer he lives alone, and we can infer that based off the fact that he's talking to someone on the phone and watching a video, we could infer he must be like the maintenance man or some kind of person who works in the apartment complex. So that's the setting.
Mhm.
What's the main idea?
So, the guy was sitting in his apartment watching what's going on downstairs. In a hallway. It looks like he's watching his security camera.
Yep, and that's it. That's just the main idea. So let's look at the theme here. So, what lesson do we learn from the fact that he's watching the security camera, he sees something going down, and he's like watching it, didn't really do anything the first time, and then went after to go see what happened? Like, what is that trying to teach us? What's the lesson there?
He was curious to know what was happening.
Yeah. And what happened after that?
He got attacked also.
So what does that teach you?
Pretty much that, like, curiosity killed the cat.
Exactly, right? Maybe we shouldn't be curious. I also felt like he was kind of lazy. I think if he saw that on there, he should have gone down immediately or called the cops. So I kind of feel like it's trying to tell you can't play things back in your life. You got to act on things the first time, right?
Yeah.
So we have a couple of that. Okay.
It was kind of confusing though, because why did he he escaped? Why did he die after? Like, how did that continuously?
So I think he.
Work in a different direction?
So I think he died in that, because the title of the story is Playback. So it's like he's reliving that experience, right? So it's like he's trapped in there, right? So because he was curious and he went downstairs, he's now like playing that back the entire time. His curiosity had got him punished. I feel like another theme would be the fact that he didn't really act right the first time and go and help. He's like stuck in that. He's like punished. It's going to keep playing back. And I purposely choose these because I can guarantee you that what you're going to be reading on the test is not going to always be in realistic terms. It's not always going to be straightforward. A lot of what I've seen the students test on is Shakespeare and documents from the founding fathers, and it's hard to understand sometimes. Yeah. So I like to pick things that are weird and out there, so that when you're reading things, you're kind of in the habit of struggling through it. Like, what is it? What are we talking about? Oh, the colonies. Wait, and then it's kind of hard to really see their thought pattern. So it's the same thing with these movies. It's meant to challenge you. You really have to think through, really replay things, take notes. On the test, you'd be relying on your notes when you don't understand something. And you'd be thinking about your background knowledge, right? When that escapes you, then you have to infer. So when you don't have background knowledge on something, you have to go back to inferring. But that's easier to do when you have notes. That's easier to do when you're used to struggling through reading. A lot of students I've seen do not like to struggle. When something doesn't make sense, it's like easier to guess. Let's think about conflict. What conflict do we see here? Is it man versus nature, man versus society, man versus man versus self?
I feel like it could man versus self because he's like reliving his trauma.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Any other conflict we see?
It's either man versus self or man versus man.
Ah, right. And some of the questions that we're asking, some of the questions you guys are asking would be perfect test questions, right? Like, why did this happen? What was the theme? What can we infer? Right? You're going to get a lot of questions like that. So the exposition is his apartment. He's there. He's the only character besides the other two people that show up later on. We can tell who's bad by how they're dressed and what they're doing to the other person. We can tell he's supposed to be some kind of good guy, but he seems a little lazy and disconnected, antisocial. The rising action, he starts to look at the film. The climax, he comes face to face with the bad guy. The falling action is when he starts to run up the stairs, and then the resolution is when he's home and he thinks he's safe, and then he perishes. Right? Do you feel? Because this is hard. This is more of the reading standards. Do you feel if you were to see these types of questions on a test after reading a text like this, do you think you would have a problem answering the questions?
If the questions are given, probably not. But if I had to come up with just, talking about, because the questions help, like questions, why did he do it, or what did he do, or how did he do it? Those questions can be answered and it helps to put the whole situation and the whole answer together. But if I were just to say, okay, so explain this, and I wouldn't even know where to begin. I would need the question.
So one of the things you can do is as you take the test, think about the fact that normally you can see the question and the text itself. But even if you get to a question or you get to a text where you don't see the question, you know what the reading standards are. So as you're reading, think about what's probably going to come up as a question. In the beginning, you might be wrong. You might have said, oh, I thought they were going to ask me to infer about this. I thought they were going to ask me to identify the theme. But as you work through the test, you'll start seeing that you'll be able to predict what the question is going to be. You'll be able to see it coming because you know what the reading standards are. You know it's inferencing, theme, main idea, figurative language, citing textual evidence. So once you know all these reading standards, as you take the test and you're looking at the written text, it becomes almost obvious like what they're going to ask you, right? Like if they spend a lot of time describing a character, you know they're going to ask you about character traits because they wouldn't take the time to do that unless they're going to ask you about it later. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's the goal with close reading is that's going to help us understand what the test is asking for, which is going to help us become better readers and we'll become more efficient. It makes you better able to manage your time and it makes you really apply the text to yourself. When we close read, when we're trying to predict where things are going, it helps you with the structure of the test. Questions?
No question.
Comments, concerns? Perfect. Okay. So next week, we're going to be following the same thing. We're going to be working with two variable equations using a couple of different algebraic methods. And then in reading, we're going to continue to spiral with everything, theme, main idea. And then we're going to need to look at figurative language. And we're going to need to look at text structures as well. The way that texts are structured, so that you understand the way when you're reading, a question is going to come up and what structure the author is using to prove a point or to guide the story. There'll be PowerPoints on those that I can send out. All right. So, no further questions?
No, I don't have it.
All right. So, see everyone next week on Monday.
Okay. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye. You too.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
All right.
Jacob.